And we're kicking things off with a teen comedy starring Jennifer Love Hewitt and Will Friedle from Boy Meets World. That had to be a decent sized hit, right? Well, this movie actually made just 300,000. Okay, 30,000. 3,000? This is getting ridiculous now. This movie made $300 in cinemas in 1997? How is it possible that this Lost Comedies box office total was less than my wage at Blockbuster Video in the same year? Well, hop on board and let's find out. Picture the scene. You arrive at a cinema on opening night, and not just for any film, but your own feature film debut. Not only that, but you are the star of the movie. You've already made a name for yourself on TV, with a lead role in one of the most popular family sitcoms of the era. But this is different. You're about to become a movie star. Your co-star is a teen idol who Hollywood has big plans for. Fresh off a hit drama series, and on the brink of breaking out on the big screen too. This movie has to be a hit, right? To mark the occasion, you've flown out to Boulder, Colorado with the director, ready to enjoy one of the very first public screenings. Only, there's no line at the box office in Boulder, and when you step inside the theatre, finding your seat isn't exactly a challenge. In fact, it doesn't take long to realise you and the director are the only two people there. On the evening of September 26, 1997, this is the exact fate that became a reality for Will Friedle, when he and director George Huang took a trip to the Rocky Mountains to witness the opening of their brand new film in person. The reception of the film, obviously, we thought it was going to be a lot bigger. They premiered it in 2 theatres in the country, and George and I flew out to one, and we were literally the only people in the theatre for the first screening. So yeah, it was a lot of work to watch it by ourselves. Yep, that's right, Trojan War was released in 2 cinemas for less than a week and made barely over $300 in the process. So much about this movie didn't make sense to me at the time, and a lot of it still doesn't to this day. Why was a $15 million movie with pretty decently sized teen stars released with basically no promotion and pulled from cinemas so quickly? Then there was the title. What on earth was going on there? And why didn't they just wait a few months before they released it? Maybe we should rewind just a little bit. In early 1997, both Will Friedle and Jennifer Love Hewitt were riding the crest of a wave. Will had played Corey's older brother Eric in ABC's Boy Meets World since 1993, and Jennifer had joined the cast of Fox's family drama Party of 5 2 years later. They both seemed to be the latest in the long production line of teen actors who were ready for their crack at becoming legitimate big screen stars. So their casting as co-stars of a teen comedy made a lot of sense at the time. It had a recognised force overseeing it in producer Charles Gordon, who had hit pay dirt with the likes of Die Hard, Die Hard 2 and Field of Dreams over the previous decade. I mean, Gordon's last film credit before this had been Waterworld. George Huang, the director attached to the project, was a former Hollywood PA who was coming off a fairly well-received film debut, the 1994 black comedy Swimming with Sharks. Although it hadn't made much money, it became a word-of-mouth hit on video, and the likes of Roger Ebert had reviewed it positively. A raunchy teen comedy wasn't the most obvious follow-up to a biting satire of the worst of Hollywood, but, you know, Warner Brothers was keen to make it, and the film had a $15 million budget, so Trojan War seemed to have legs, and it knew how to use them. Or something. You could be forgiven for thinking from the title that this was a swords and sandals epic chronicling the siege of the city of Troy in graphic detail, but the actual movie that lay behind the cryptic title was in fact the story of a very different quest. The quest to get laid. Friedle played the role of Brad Kimball, a geeky high school type whose best friend is equally supposedly geeky type Leah, Jennifer Love Hewitt's character. Brad's dream girl, however, is not Jennifer Love Hewitt, but instead his other classmate Brooke, played by Marley Shelton. When Brooke asks him over to help her study, she ends up deciding to make all Brad's dreams come true. The only problem is he doesn't have protection, so Brad hurries off to purchase some, before running into all sorts of chaos involving his dad's Jaguar being stolen, friendly gang members taking him hostage, a Hispanic lady who falls in love with him because she thinks he looks like David Hasselhoff, and even John Hughes teen movie legend Anthony Michael Hall in a memorable cameo as a psychotic bus driver. In the midst of all of this, Lee Majors turns up as a cop who ends up giving Brad a bit of assistance before a climactic house party where Brad finally thinks he is getting everything he always wanted. Or is he? Usually at this stage I'd investigate the box office performance week by week, see where a film landed in the top 10 on opening weekend, that kind of thing. But here, that clearly won't be necessary. As Will Friedle painfully discovered on opening night, barely anyone came out to see Trojan War. Warner's yanked it from cinemas extremely quickly, but its very small early sample size of 2 screens hadn't gone well. Still though, dumping it completely after less than a week was pretty harsh. Maybe it was a contractual obligation to get it in cinemas before a VHS release. Or maybe there was some sort of Hollywood accounting going on. Who knows? The 2006 thriller Zizis Road? Zizik? Anyway, the 2006 movie with that name is often cited as the lowest grossing cinema release ever after it made just $30 in American cinemas, literally running on one screen once a day at midday to appease the Screen Actors Guild. So I guess something similar could be at play here, but Will Friedle has said they were expecting it to get a bigger release. Something doesn't quite add up. It probably wasn't the conspiracy teenage culture slice thought it was back in the day, even if that made for a great theory in my head and early internet chat rooms at the end of the century. The film did get some sort of second life on the small screen, in large part thanks to the increased profile of its female star. There was a VHS release, and I remember discovering it once or twice late night on Sky Movies here in the UK, but it wasn't exactly a promotional priority and didn't make it to DVD until 2005. Trojan War isn't a masterpiece of the genre or anything. In fact, my nostalgic haze could be clouding the fact that this isn't a very good film. But did it deserve better? Sure. And did it deserve to make more than $309 in cinemas? Definitely. As a forgotten throwback that is now slightly worryingly almost 30 years old, it's completely watchable. And I guess it's a shame it didn't get a bit more exposure at the time. In the end, maybe simply some better timing could have saved the film from becoming a punchline. Released in cinemas just weeks after Trojan War had completely bombed, was I Know What You Did Last Summer, a teen horror which made over $125 million at the box office and propelled Jennifer Love Hewitt to legitimate movie star status. It felt like she was everywhere by the end of '97 too, not just a movie star. Jennifer Love Hewitt had become a force in pop culture, postponing Trojan War's release by a few months with a newly bankable name attached, along with an industry increasingly seeing raunchy teen comedies as a genre to bet on, could have seen it ride that wave to profitability in cinemas. But instead, there was no second wave for Trojan War, and less than a year later, it was Can't Hardly Wait that would become Love Hewitt's very first teen comedy hit, more than doubling its budget at the box office and becoming a big success on video and DVD. Its soundtrack even made it to number 25 on the Billboard album chart. Can't Hardly Wait's presence lingered on in pop culture for far longer than Trojan War managed to. The title of the film, whilst actually kind of clever, didn't help Trojan War's chances either. Not being American, I had no idea Trojan was actually a reference to a major brand, but even putting that aside, it sounds like a historical war film and feels like a working title that would be changed closer to release but for some reason never was. Compare Trojan War as a title to Can't Hardly Wait. While the first one is a neat play on words, referencing a brand and the quest of the protagonist, it wouldn't instantly make sense to the target audience of a teen comedy. On the other hand, Can't Hardly Wait just as a title is a bit abstract, but it's still emotive, relatable, and just evocative enough without being too descriptive. The film itself is alright, definitely not one of the worst teen comedies of the era, but also definitely not one of the best. But that title, Can't Hardly Wait, sure it's taken from a replacement song and the grammar is dubious, but for a teen movie, that is top tier. Can't Hardly Wait just sounds like a classic teen comedy drama without even knowing anything about the film behind it. And Trojan War does not. Or maybe I'm just overanalyzing things a tad. Anyway, we can't ignore the massive elephant in the room with this movie any longer. No, not the questionable in hindsight cast members, but the fact that Leah, the friend who nobody notices and Brad completely looks past for 95% of the movie, is Jennifer Love Hewitt. Much like Rachel Lee Cook in She's All That, the casting isn't quite believable. In the end, for Will Friedle, his time as a Hollywood headliner ended up being brief. While Jennifer Love Hewitt went on to star in the brilliantly titled I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, along with the likes of Heartbreakers and both Garfield and Garfield A Tale of Two Kitties, Friedle could only manage starring opposite the Shermanator himself, Chris Owen, in 2004 in National Lampoon's Gold Diggers, one of the worst movies I've personally ever seen. He has since become a considerable success in the world of voice acting, most notably as the go-to voice for numerous Batman projects. And he still looks back fondly on the Trojan War experience overall, despite nobody watching it at all. Like, no one. For producer Charles Gordon, the failure of Trojan War didn't stop his production company Daybreak from securing a $500 million credit line for future productions in 1999. Though he did go on to produce the likes of October Sky and the Hitman movie, Daybreak Productions, which seems to have been created to make Trojan War, only has one more credit listed on IMDb, the 2004 Alicia Cuthbert comedy The Girl Next Door. Honestly, this all just adds to the mystique of a missing link in teen movie history. Trojan War remains a fascinating lost film. It took on an almost mythical status for me at school, hard to find and occasionally turning up late night on TV. Did this movie really exist? Or was it a figment of my imagination? For years, I genuinely wasn't sure, but it remains a prime example of that most interesting of film groups, the lowest grossing movies of all time. And yet, if it had just been released in 1998, it could have all been so different. But maybe, just maybe, the complete lack of a release was the plan all along.